when I got asked to do a presentation for MentorAbility, I jumped at the chance. I was very excited to talk about something I'm quite passionate about. But in speaking with some colleagues and in reflecting on what it was I wanted to share, I thought that I should put my money where my mouth is and involve a person who has a lived experience in having autism and having some barriers to employment. And as one of the people in my program and someone who I'm working really closely with, and we've developed a nice rapport together, Justin was the perfect candidate to have me, to be with me during this presentation. So our presentation is divided into two. So all of the content that's in black coloring is mine, and all of the content that's in orange is Justin's. And we're just sort of going to take turns and talk about something that's really important. Yeah. Sound good?
Absolutely.
Oh, and one more thing. Newfoundlanders are wearing masks inside in public places, which we all have been, but as Justin and I have been in a working bubble together for the past number of months, we feel comfortable on, and that would have made this presentation a bit harder on everybody. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to get started.
All right.
So I'll give a brief overview of autism spectrum disorder, or we can just say ASD for short. So autism is a lifelong neurological disorder that typically appears before the age of 3 years old. And it impacts people verbally, non-verbally, with communication, social interaction, difficulties or differences in execution, and the understanding and adherence of social norms or social expectations. And it is a spectrum disorder. In our community, we are using phrases like high and low functioning, less and less, as really it's not reflective of the skills and abilities and barriers that a person might have. So a bit more old-fashioned was the idea that people are high-functioning autism and can work. But the truth is, a person with high-functioning autism have a high IQ, but may not have the technical skills to be able to work or cope independently, although their IQ is high. So we're just saying folks with ASD for the purposes of this.
Yeah, back when I was in school back in the day, I was like, I had these obsessive interests. Like I could remember all the company logos, but I had no particular interest in what they might say is the normal activities of life. Of course, back then, I was obviously in '88, back in the late '80s. I would be, at least, my mother was worried that I was just going to be seen as an oddball. And so she took me to she got me tested, was it pediatric psychological testing, of which they kind of thought they were aware of my symptoms, but they didn't go as far as a full diagnosis. Because at the time, my mother almost didn't want to believe it. So at that point, we just settled for it, and I went from K to 12 with no assistance, and other than every now and then, I think I remember like around grade like 4 or 5, I remember I started going to these, like, they did Rorschach tests on me. Remember those ones with like the image where it's like they put ink blot, and they try to tell you what it is. So they kind of did that kind of testing on me. I didn't understand what it is, and I kept saying it, and then they wouldn't tell me the results. And I just knew that I just thought it was cool to get like a half hour out of my class, and I was just grateful for that. And I didn't understand that they were trying to figure out anything wrong with me. So as I grew up, I entered adulthood literally with the assumption that I was supposed to be normal. So obviously there was that gap because it wasn't obvious because my autism was definitely the least obvious kind, as they call high functioning. And so yeah, only the past few years have I figured this stuff out. So yeah, so I had to go through life with largely just being unusual, I guess. So there we go.
Yeah. So that's exactly why, and Justin is teaching me all the time why a phrase like high functioning doesn't really make sense to this community. And
Megan, sorry to interrupt, Megan.
Yeah.
Your audio is cutting in and out. So Justin's sounding okay and clear, but when you begin speaking, sometimes it cuts in and cuts out. So I don't know if you can maybe get a bit closer to the microphone when you speak, but Justin sounds okay.
Okay, or maybe I'll speak a little louder.
That seems okay right now. Thanks.
Okay, so in the pilot that I'm facilitating, we are working with individuals that are on the spectrum and can work independently. But the function of this is we're providing people with an advocate who need assistance in addressing some of the issues they feel they may be having, some of the barriers, and we're working together to make that work, to set Justin up ahead of time, to assist with interview strategies, techniques for onboarding, things that will make him feel successful so that when a match is made and he is able to head to work, he feels equipped to do so. Justin, can you speak to us a little bit about what getting your diagnosis quite late, as you were 28 years old?
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about what it meant for you to finally get the diagnosis?
Yeah,
It was unusual because I looked at, I thought, and I looked it all up, and it was definitely interesting for sure. And even the old term that was used, obviously, was called Asperger's syndrome. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that term. And I thought, oh yeah, and then they made fun of it, and they even said, yeah, ASSBURGERS. Like, I mean, and I thought, okay, like, what does it even mean? And then even I read articles about how those with Asperger's are the most selfish, narcissistic people that ever lived. And then, okay, well, yeah, and then it's just I tried to continue on, but of course it didn't help me when I was at Sobus.
Right, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll give sort of an outline of some basic characteristics of autism. So typically, folks with a diagnosis will have some differences in understanding and applying social norms and adhering to social constructs. There may be some rigid thinking patterns, difficulty transitioning from one topic to the next, or one part of a job to the next, even one room to another space. There could be an over or under reaction with some sort of sensory need. There could be challenges with self-regulating, regulating oneself, one's emotions, one's reactions to the world around them. Some literal thinking and literal speaking patterns, and minimized recognition or understanding of others' points of view, the theory of mind idea. So how do those characteristics, Justin, which are, I mean, anybody could sort of pull those off of the web.
Yeah.
But how does that relate to you?
Well, absolutely. It's like every time I have to learn, it's like every time what people take for granted, when, especially like even when I used to interact with my uncles in my youth or whatever, people would take things for granted. And I would rapidly, let me see. Yeah, one correct way to do something. Yeah, absolutely. Like if I would develop patterns in my mind as a coping mechanism to try to get past it. So it's like, how would I compare it? It would be the equivalent of, it's like when you teach a robot to do something and then you're wondering why I did it wrong the second time, because you got to keep doing everything over and over again. So I had to develop patterns when I saw a fork in the road would be annoying. And yeah, it would be very difficult for me to change the course because I was so fixated on one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I would visit my uncles in like, yeah, like my uncle would talk about, like, I would barely get like 5 minutes of conversation with my uncle, and then he would talk to the person sitting next to me for probably like an hour and a half. And then it's just, I mean, yeah, I know that's kind of understandable, but then it's like, okay, yeah, you realize yes, this is definitely a sharp crack. If you don't deal with it, it does crack up your life.
Mm-hmm. So something Justin and I have talked about is how if we think about folks on the spectrum using all of their focus and energy and channeling into doing the technical skills of work or trying to navigate socially, just how much energy that is taking. When we're just saying a second ago that these characteristics of challenging sensory needs, challenges in communicating, it's just this rapid fire mixture of information. And we're placing expectations on folks on the spectrum to adhere and understand and participate socially the way neurotypical people do, without really taking into account that there are these challenges and these differences, and the learning would have to be done differently. It would have to be
Yeah,
done the way you understand.
yeah, it's pretty much like, imagine if you're trying to play pool and then someone kept moving the cue ball, like the cue ball kept rolling, someone kept flicking it, and you're aiming, and then the cue ball's moved another few inches, and you're aiming again. It's like, yeah, by the time you catch, it's already gone from you, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. This is why I asked him to join me.
Yeah.
Excellent analogy. So we're obviously talking about how this impacts people in the workplace. So people on the spectrum are vastly underemployed, and the majority of supports for employment for people are generally developed for people that have physical disabilities or different cognitive impairments. There's a real gap for people who are on the autism spectrum who don't need a job coach. It's a gap that has been addressed here in Newfoundland with the Autism Action Plan, which is where this pilot idea came from. So we're looking to support those folks like Justin who have worked, who can work. Are they working happily and successfully because their social needs are being met? No. So that's what we're here trying to address. So we're finding that individuals on this end of the autism spectrum have the hard skills needed for the job, but where the support is needed is identifying these soft skill social nuances that often really get in the way and have a negative impact on people once they're in work. And it can impact the bottom line of the business. We'll get more into that piece. But more importantly, not having the skeleton key or the right pool thing to participate socially at work is impacting the mental health of people who are already struggling for different reasons. So we're looking to level the playing field. And our goal with this presentation, and certainly with sharing information and with this pilot that we are working on, is that with a prescriptive process and some individualized and creative supports, that persons with autism can be happily and independently and functionally employed. Would you like to chat a bit about SOBIs?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when I was there, I delivered full performance. Like, I'd do my shifts and I'd get stuff done, obviously. But at the same time, when it came to, like, obviously this is, again, standard stuff for those without autism, but when you got it, when you're autistic like me, then, which it starts off not so bad because when you don't know each other, I mean, I can say much, but then when, like, you're in the lunchroom I mean, even when you're on a cash register, and I even would say to customers, hello. And even when I got my performance review, I did everything perfect except I didn't do small. I was like I didn't do enough small talk, or I didn't do enough, like, I didn't really engage because even though I was like friendly and everything, I was never sour. But the fact that when the customer come up and be like, hi, and I go scan, and, oh, thanks a lot, thank you. Like, I always say thank you. I mean, I had no problem. Like, I knew how to do that stuff. I knew how to say hello. I knew how to say thank you. But the fact is, even what I thought were basics were good enough, but no, it really isn't. It's not going to be, because this is what people are used to, and they don't have to think about it like I do, and others like myself. So, yeah, personality, definitely. I mean, yeah, without those elements, and then especially when people are coming in, whether coworkers or customers, I mean, they might not particularly mind per se, but it does. It dramatically I guess I could put it this way: it shortens your weight. I guess it really truncates you. It means you're only operating at about like 20% power, even though you might think you're like, I mean, at the time I thought I was like kicking it. I thought I was like, oh yeah, I got this done. I'm like, everybody likes me, and no, but it doesn't do it. And it will, where it will. And maybe not at first. You might be able to get away with it for 2 years, maybe 3, but over time, it's gonna knock you. And I made a mistake of believing that it wouldn't, but it does. These things count. Yeah. These things are crucial. And yeah, niches for maximum productivity for employer satisfaction. Absolutely. We have to, like, if we're gonna have a future for ourselves, and if we're gonna use the labor force as we should, then yes, there has to be a better matchup. And how would I say it? Yeah, these things have to be dealt with early on, and we have to know, because sometimes I might not know, sometimes the other person might not know. So if we have, we have to at least understand each other. If the employer and the employee don't get each other, the friction will slowly rise, guaranteed. It will slowly rise, and then guess what? One of you is going to get burned, whether you're getting fired or quit. Obviously, in my case, I quit, but still, I mean, no matter what, the relationship, it weakens it over time. It does, and it's easy to fall into the trap of, just because I'm able to show up and I'm able to like put the carts in on time and then leave. It's not going to do it enough, because you have to connect. The connection has to be there. Otherwise, your mind's not going to.
Justin demonstrated for almost 5 years, 4 years, 4 years, 9 months, as a high performance Sobeys employee. And he does have excellent references for that component. That's part of what we're working on together as he looks for new employment. But something we talk about almost every week that we get together is just how detrimental the piece of him not being able to fit in socially. And it wasn't for lack of trying, but it was for lack of understanding in 2 ways. One, early on, that Justin didn't realize that he would want to participate in such social aspects, but also that his employer and fellow co-workers didn't understand how to do that to support him. So you've got well-meaning people and a barrier.
Pretty much.
So we're going to move into this topic of workplace culture. And every workplace has one. And in a nutshell, it's an environment that is created for all employees. And it's a combination of the beliefs of the organization, its values, its leadership from top down, and just the general attitude and vibe of the workspace. And ideally, if you have a positive workplace culture, it's contributing well to the emotional and relationships that exist at work. We talked a lot about this. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, the fact is, like, go in. Again, this is stuff that's usually not a problem in your first 6 months. But then when you settle in, and then say, like, I go in lunchroom, And then, yeah, you might think, oh yeah, there's a conversation going on, and you don't prepare. Oh yeah, you just think, oh yeah, I'm just bowing out, like I'm just keeping my head down. And then guess what? This is where the camaraderie is built. It's not just they're not just talking to each other just to pass the time because they're on break. This is literally how we feel each other. Yeah, I mean, yeah, friendships are at least acquaintances, so that then in the long run, that's how the promotions happen. That's how the stuff that you think is like, oh, this is just useless extras, but no, it's not. It's really isn't.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then it again, for most part, yeah, it's something that's so easy to bury. It's very easy to bury it. It's like how, yeah, okay, like school kept myself. Yeah, changing social. Changing, adapting to social expectations. Yes, absolutely. That as even like, for example, when I went to, because we'd have every like probably 4 months or so, we'd have like a meeting on like a Sunday afternoon or something, and then like then when my then boss was saying, if you want to go to another department, you would need to, oh, I forgot, but at the same time as like, then I became more frozen. I was like, you know what, I'm staying in the front end, even though normally I think if had I went to produce, I might have saved my job then, maybe. But now, of course, I'll never know that for sure. But still, the fact is, I froze at that because, like, you know what? I got to stay in this front end because this is what I know, and I don't want to change anything.
Right.
Even though normally, yeah, this would be the chance to. Not only that, not only if you go to produce or another department, you get paid more and you get more hours. But then I was thinking, oh yeah, I don't want to learn it. I don't want to, like, I gotta keep what I have.
Yeah.
And so it became a thing. Yeah, it basically became like you're clinging to what you have, and yeah, it's like you're navigating.
There's so many moving parts.
Yeah.
Too many things in the air.
Yeah.
So with some of the components to workplace culture, for everybody watching that has a job or has been employed, often employed adults are expected to simply catch on to the hanging out in the lunchroom, the nuances. It's expected from adults who are employed that you already know how to do these things, how to sit in the break room on your phone, who to chat with, shared food rules. It's expected that as adults who are in work, you already know all of these things. When we're realizing now, for the folks on the spectrum that we're working with, these aren't obvious and do need to be broken down and explained and taught to, so that people can be a whole person at work and not just the rapid fire Sobeys cashier.
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely a huge difference, for sure.
So in all workplaces, the culture is often, there's a hidden factor to things. Things aren't overtly discussed or talked about, or are not necessarily a part of your training in or your onboarding. And as I just said a moment ago, it's this expectation that we have of adults in the world that you just know how to participate and do such things. So some examples of things like this would be the rules around a shared kitchenette space. So most offices have one, if not multiple, shared zones for coffee and tea and donuts and things like that. And there's like, that's so-and-so's seat every time, or that's Betty's milk. And you quickly figure out the nuances around that, what to do, what not to do. Then there's things like, whose turn is it to bring food or coffee in, for example. So maybe I eat the last muffin and somebody gives me the stink eye and I realize, oh, I should have cut it in half. That's what they do here, you know, but I would figure it out pretty quickly. I'm not on the autism spectrum. From learned past experiences, I would be able to adjust my behavior accordingly and fit right in. Other things that are sort of hidden and just expected are things like dress up or dress down days, casual Friday, or holiday parties. Everybody wear a Christmas sweater, hanging out after work, hanging out before work, and coffee breaks during. So I could give 10 more examples, and just to hit the pause button there, if we start adding up the pieces that we're talking about of folks on the spectrum with difficulties navigating socially, there's already energy being put to disregard a sensory thing that isn't important or is too much. There might be a noise issue, a scent issue, and all of the things we just listed here, they're not even really part of your work day, but they are. And you can see how this is this swarm of noise, really, that is interrupting people from functioning well at work, but also participating well at work. It's quite a balance. So what's your take on some of the hidden culture pieces?
Yeah, now, of course, the basic nature of Sobeys, because, of course, they couldn't put everybody on break at the same time. I usually only on break with maybe about 3 other people in the break from same time. So this wasn't as big a deal as maybe other places. But at the same time, I did end up just, same thing. I kept everything to a minimum. Just go on the couch and watch TV, or just like, it's just like if it heals naturally, they just bow your head down and just eat your own food and then just leave right away. Like, it's like every day. And then, when it could be, when people would obviously have chats with each other. And also there'd be like, even if I was in a morning shift, and there'd be like 8 or 9 front-end people around a table. And of course, I'd never participate.
Yeah, avoiding it was easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And so avoid social. Companies. And they did want that. I was always wondering, because we keep. Who are upbeat and emotional, and Sobeys definitely did want that 100%. And it did. It was like cognitive dissonance when I was very, very stickman, like, I guess a very seemed like robot comparison. And absolutely I did. And and being because I just I maybe I'm like unless it was some intro, like maybe a guy from Produce would talk to me about wrestling, at most I could get a 5-minute conversation talking about like John Cena or something. But other than that, like anything outside of anything I know about is just boom, is just like hello, okay, goodbye, okay. And then it definitely truncated the whole concept of it.
So without clearly, in a way that people understand, identifying the importance of these sort of hidden social nuances and expectations, while taking into account that individuals on the spectrum have complex sensory needs, communication differences, we're not allowing people to participate at all, or we're just allowing them to participate incorrectly and maybe do things wrong, eat all the donuts by mistake, and or not take your turn to buy the milk that everyone shares for coffee. It's sort of in 2 camps. It's don't let people participate at all, or let them participate incorrectly. And really what that does is cause tension and strife between colleagues, between an employer and an employee, and most importantly, it's causing this internal discourse for the person that's trying to navigate these things really alone.
And eventually at a point, like, you become like a ghost in your own company in a way. It's like, and again, it seems like it would be good for me. I guess I technically like, but it does not help your career. It really doesn't. You might think it does. And I know we got a fair number of guys like me might go in and try the same thing. Like in the long term, it won't do. It just won't do it.
Yeah.
You have to have some that don't mean you have to like have rapport everyone, but you do need to have the capacity to build some at least some generic rapport, if anything. And when you're there trying to make everything speed up, like you're just using the fewest words and you're just listening to what they're saying and you're just taking this, and it's like you're basically trying to press fast forward on every time someone's like, let's fast forward, press fast forward quick.
Yeah.
And then you're fast forwarding like half your life, you know.
Justin, can you elaborate on how being the mental tiredness that you get from navigating the social piece,
Oh yeah.
how did that impact you being able to take initiative, to be able to go for the promotion? How did it interfere?
It completely shut it. I was still able to get my work done, but all I ended up doing was just basically, I took the ostrich head. Essentially, my headspace, I might as well be an ostrich with the head in the sand. And you're like a shell. Yeah, you're pretty much like a ghost. I mean, you're just trying to build you're trying to put yourself under the umbrella, and you're also trying to, it does where, and
While working.
Yeah, while working. Yeah, so by the time I get home, yes, I would be wore out and no wonder, because even though, I mean, they would offer me extra shifts, but I was just so exhausted, I turned down like the extra $50 or $60 I got at many times, because I was just mentally drained. And yeah, it will mentally drain you, absolutely. Well, me anyway, and obviously your mileage may vary.
How are we doing, Ashley? Going?
Sorry, my computer is super laggy. We're doing great, Megan.
I'm just wondering if we're doing good for time and that.
Yeah, it's 20 to 3 o'clock here in Newfoundland.
All right, we're gonna keep trucking. So we're talking about these hidden social expectations, and as I've said, it's this idea that people strut into a workplace and should already know or have the tools to do these pieces. Neurotypical individuals tend to innately understand what to do at work, not the technical parts of your job, the hidden social pieces. And if I do something wrong at my new job around something like this, I forget to bring in my $5 on wear jeans Friday, I'd learn pretty quickly there'd be some sort of little consequence, and I'd figure it out and I would adjust my behavior. And as we're saying, this isn't as obvious to people who are on the spectrum and are using all of their energy to get through this social piece and to do the job that they've been hired to do. So what we're saying is, without clearly identifying these concepts and breaking things down in a way that people understand, that we'll give a whole bunch of suggestions to later in the presentation, we're allowing people to fail or to kind of suffer and not be a whole complete person at work as is deserved of everybody in our community, in our society.
Yeah, noticing, people have camaraderie. So it would be, I would see how people would just easily have like the quick 3-minute they would be able to have like very short but still very meaningful conversations. And I mean, I looked at it, I watched them doing it, I thought, okay, yeah, whatever. And and also, I wouldn't do I would never do anything in the holidays or the theme days, because it just felt, it felt wonky. I mean, and trying to.
I would imagine it would be hard to jump in and participate in things like that when you didn't feel that you had really a built-in group at work to enjoy those things with. Part of the fun of doing things silly at work, like everybody wears a pink hat day, is that you've already developed a rapport with people, and it's cool and fun to be a bit silly in your work day. If Justin hadn't have had that opportunity to do so, why would he jump on the bandwagon to wear the silly hat with everybody else? So they're small things, but they add up, because the truth is everyone's job, no matter what job it is highly social. And there's a little bit of a skeleton key to get in to figure out what it is and how to participate fully.
Yeah, especially when you're in a building with, even in your department, there's usually at least, you got like nine coworkers, and you're like, obviously everybody's not each other's friend, but they can definitely touch each other mentally more than I can do anyone. And yeah, it does. Yeah, and then you feel like, and then the longer it goes, and then you're like the hermit guy that kind of goes on his cash register. He doesn't say a word to anyone else, and then he leaves. And then again, which I thought was pretty good, but yeah, it's like a slow decline.
Slow burn.
Yeah, and then it's a strange. Yeah, it's hard for me to describe it, but it's absolutely what does happen. And yeah, if you're evasive in like small, like social, like mind to mind connections, then you become, it's like you're not even there. It's like you're, yeah, it's like you're a statue. If anything, that's what it's going to end up happening. Because I'm just trying to imagine, like, if I were like, say if I owned a company and I had a worker that was like trying to keep his words to the minimum number possible of words, and you'd be like, yeah, you might look at him, is he depressed? Yeah, it's not a, yeah, it doesn't really fly.
That's right. So what we're finding, the more Justin and I and my other speakers talk about this topic, and it's a hot topic around here, it's one of the biggest pieces that we all work on together, is that with the social aspect of work and folks on the spectrum who do get employed, often we're finding that this topic is simply not addressed. It's not addressed between the employer and the new employee at onboarding or during training at any point. The person's being hired and everybody just sort of goes to work. So what's wrong with that is we're feeling that the employer doesn't have the knowledge or support on autism, and that this social nuance piece is such a big deal. And if it is addressed, you are going to get maximum work and potential out of that new employee. You will have a better, more solid camaraderie and a team. It's better for the bottom line, and it's just simply the right thing to do. The other thing that we find is that an employer does know that Justin isn't participating correctly socially, but he's hired. He got a job. He has hired a person with a disability, and that's what counts. And both, we would say, are
not
acceptable anymore. A lot of knowledge on this topic. It really just needs to start coming out into the world as being a big piece, a very important piece of people with ASD, and allowing them to participate in the world this way, like everybody else who has been hired.
All right.
Okay, we're passionate about this topic. So we're going to move along to some strategies and suggestions. Justin and I came up with these together, and we're developing some of them during our program, and we're hopefully going to get to test them out when we connect Justin to an employer in the future. We're hoping really soon. He's had some interviews. Things are going really great. But so we'll assume that Justin is hired. So what we want folks to do who are employers is to start a process at a pre-onboarding stage. So you've hired an individual, you understand or have been told or know that they have autism spectrum disorder. So at that early stage, before your new employee has even started, we are suggesting that from management down, we need to have some information sharing. So that could be contacting a supported employment agency like we work here at Avalon Employment. There's lots of information on the internet about this, and it's really about wrapping your head around concepts and topics of inclusion, characteristics and traits of people on the spectrum, how that could impact them at work. It's just gathering some information, showing some interest at a very basic level about what it means to be inclusive and what it means to be an employed person on the spectrum. You want to make sure that as the individual is getting ready to start their first day at work, that things are given in a way that they understand. So, you know, Justin may need information presented a little bit differently than Bob. Maybe the schedule needs to be written out in point form or with a different color font or on an iPad, differently from the shared schedule that's in the kitchenette. And these are pieces that are quite easy to adapt to. And obviously you would want to speak to the individual and ask what they would need. You know, this isn't about creating things on the fly. It's about involving the person every step of the way. You would want, from a pre and onboarding and an HR perspective, to also visit or revisit any policies that you have on inclusion, on workplace harassment, on bullying. You know, does our company feel wholly that people should be respected and cared for at work? What is our policy around these things? Do we need to create one to be truly inclusive? So there's all these steps that are to be done really early on in the process to make it fair for everybody. All information should be detailed. You know, maybe it would assist Justin to have a bit of a roadmap of a day in the life of the SOBI's job. Some sort of checklist that he could follow, some kind of expectation list. Just visual, fair to the way he learns and reads and understands, and involving that employee every step of the way. With an onboarding process, you'd want to make sure that there's a fair chance for Justin or whomever to be properly introduced to all staff, to all spaces, and to go to the kitchenette with this individual and show the ins and outs of it and what the expectations are and the fun parts that happen in that space. That it doesn't need to be a mystery for this individual to figure out or to get wrong or to avoid, but that it's a part of how you start work, and it's a part that you can learn to enjoy and participate in. And these are topics that can be revisited frequently the first few months of work. You know, often there's probationary periods for any new hire. And these are concepts that can be revisited again and again to really ensure that the individual on the spectrum who's being hired is familiar with these concepts and is enjoying them and is able to participate in them. Because as we've said, that will only allow Justin to work harder and to feel mentally happy and safe and sound at work. Right? Absolutely. There is a component too that Justin and I talk a lot about, and that is that there is an expectation on the individual. So, you know, if Justin is getting hired or Bob with autism is getting hired, there is also an expectation on that individual to want to participate accurately and socially at work. And if that's a difficult piece, again, I would suggest contacting agencies that offer supports in mental health and supported employment to get some expectations and assistance in how to deliver that information to that person. Really, the more information that you can get and share with people, the better. And when everyone understands the expectations and barriers, that's where you can really work together to find some common ground. And it's about leveling the playing field to allow people to work to their full potential, but to also participate socially, because it's just as important as the technical piece of work. In terms of retention, just to go back with some of the characteristics, some individuals on the spectrum may need some alterations to things. Maybe it is an alternate break time. Maybe you're trying to tie in hanging out with new colleagues at break, but then having an additional 5 minutes at the end where it's a bit more of a downtime for himself. You know, so long as it's within the allotted 15-minute break, let's be reasonable with people. Let's offer alternatives. Same with things with light, different sensory accommodations. You know, can we be cool with people having no more fluorescent overhead lights? Can the seating arrangements be a little bit different? How can we look at a shared space and make it functional and safe and easy for everybody to be involved in and to participate in? So there are so many suggestions and strategies. My biggest tip is to talk to the person that you're working with. Justin has taught me so much in 3 months, so much so that I needed to have him sit beside me during this presentation. And it's not enough to just say, I'm going to make a visual schedule. That person might not read a visual schedule. It's about utilizing the knowledge that the individual with autism has and pairing it with professionals like myself and really trying to make a tangible plan that works moving forward so that people can work functionally. They're there to do a job, but they're also able to learn these hidden social constructs and be more involved in the whole component of the workplace. We're going to give Justin a final word, and then we're hoping to chat further with everybody that's watching.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. This is the main thing here. Yeah, obviously the flow of the autistic mind is indeed different in each of us. Like what works for me might not work for you. So yeah, I just showed you mine. What we have in common is necessity for us and our employers to meet somewhere in the middle. Otherwise, we will have lower performance and be extremely unsatisfied. It's also important that we can convince employers that it really is worth their time and money to even do all these things that they don't have to do for like 99.9% of the people they hire. Really, so we are asking quite a bit, but at the same time, we have to prove that it is worth it for them because the law of work is always the same. It costs a company more, just like if it costs $15 an hour and you're only doing $14 an hour worth of work, like they're losing money. Like they'll get richer by giving you the boot, really. So just because we have needs doesn't automatically mean we're going to get, like, we have to give. It's not just on them to give, we have to give too. Then employer, yeah. I'm matching autistic people and also other disabled people with proper jobs, like good niches that we can like gel with. Yeah, might cost a company say $20 an hour to accommodate you, but if you can do even more than that productivity, then it'll be worth the while. And yeah, it is my hope to get that proper connection between employer and employee that, yeah, we both have the benefit. Yeah, obviously it has to be a two-way street. We can't go, there's no room for entitlement because of course for one of us, there's 100 neurotypicals that they can hire instead. So we always got to it has to come from both sides and not just sit there, oh, wham, I'm autistic. You got to do everything. I'm going to sit around and you got to do everything for me. No, that's not how life goes. So that's to keep in mind. So yeah, we have to both do our part.
Well said. That's it for our presentation, but we would love to chat and have some comments or questions. So I'll bring it over to Ashley.
Guys, thank you so much. I feel like I'm speaking on behalf of many people who attended us today and saying that, Justin, you gave us some amazing analogies and perspective into what you experience as somebody who's, on the spectrum, what you experience in the workplace. And that's really valuable for employers to learn about. So thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you as well, Megan, for giving us some amazing tips and things that we can do as, an employer to help people who are on the spectrum to make our workplaces more accessible. I do actually have a question for each of you that I thought of as I was listening. So Megan, I typed it up so I didn't forget. Megan, if you could give one piece of advice to an employer who may be a little bit anxious or maybe they're a little bit unsure of what to expect for a new employee who is on the spectrum, what advice would that be?
I definitely would suggest, if it's available, to reach out to places that offer supported employment and or support for health, or people like all the amazing people that work here at Avalon Employment. And there are companies like that all over Canada who know that clientele and understand. And that's really a good starting place. The more information you can get about autism on a whole is good. All information is good information. The biggest thing I would say is if you could potentially speak to someone who's on the spectrum, as I have with Justin, an advocate, a very intelligent, strong advocate who, and it's true, the analogies that Justin provides really concretize this subject matter. That alone could really help an employer not be so afraid of addressing these needs. And there's also so much literature and really interesting websites. And as my email is there on the page, I would be more than happy to provide a list of resources that I go to frequently. I would love to share those with other people.
Thanks, Megan. And Justin, my question for you is, if you could give advice to a person who's also on the spectrum and maybe a little bit nervous about starting a new job, it could be their very first job that they're starting, what advice would you give that person?
Make sure it's all about finding your spot. Like, find your spot. If you can't find your spot, like, you don't belong there, because you might think, yeah, there's no hanging on. It's all about finding the right spot and find the place that fits you. And also look at everything, like always, if you're on your like 5th or 6th shift, because it's going to take a few shifts. You're not going to know right away. You might take 5 shifts or you might take 25 shifts, but always look at every single thing and try to understand how much stress level you have. And if you have more bad days than good days, like, it's a 95% chance that either you're going to quit or get fired anyway. So if it's not a right fit, you got to get out of there. You're not going to really, it's very rare that you're going to be able to change it, or that they're going to be able to change for you. So it's part of it is the employers trying to meet, but also it's up to us to find the right places to work.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Of course, I mean, you have to enjoy the work that you do, right?
Yeah.
If you don't enjoy it, then what's the point of doing it, right? You have to do it every day.
You will get burned out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to open up the chat box there now. So if anybody had any questions that they would like to ask Justin or Megan, please feel free to use the question and answer feature or the chat box. So we do have a couple of questions. Cynthia asked, what would a great work day look like for you, Justin? What would you be doing and how would you want to be treated?
Okay. One thing about this. Yeah, a great day would be if I could go in, and obviously if it's like a more slower day, so because when there was like when there was, say, if it's say 3 or 4 days before Christmas and there would be like 5 times more customers, obviously that blew out my mind. And then so basically a good work day is like when my mind has to do the least amount of work overall and still able to get everything done. If I can get everything done with the least amount of mental energy, that's a good day.
Thank you, Justin. We also have another question from Louise. So her question is also for Justin. You're very popular, Justin. She asked, what strategies do you have to share to balance the social/mental fatigue to ensure a decent quality of life?
Oh, wow. Good one.
Good question.
That's a good question.
Balance it out. Yeah, you just gotta get a routine in your, what I would do, just get a routine in my mind and then have a few branches, like if this, then what? So then I'd have a few branches in my routine, because I used to use GW Basic or Quick Basic back in the old days. So you would have, if the condition is, so if everything goes as predicted, then everything's going to go well. But then then you have a few branches, if something doesn't go as predicted, then you have like something ready for it. And that I use that to kind of help prevent my mind from being too overloaded, pretty
You know,
much.
you have an out.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Thanks.
You're welcome.
We also had a message. I think this would be for you, Megan. Trina asked, "Is Avalon Employment working with many clients on the spectrum?"
Yes, many.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Yep, the pilot that I'm coordinating is brand new. It just launched June 15th, which is really exciting. And I'm currently working with 5 job seekers, of which Justin is one, and there's a wait list. And there are other individuals with an autism diagnosis that are employed under our regular supported employment stream. So they are employed and they do avail of job coaches. So yes, there's a number here at Avalon Employment.
Thanks, Megan. We also another question for you, Megan, from Louise. She said, does Avalon Employment support executive level or management level autistic people in advancing their careers? It's a great question.
That's an excellent question, and I would be 100% on board to do that if a person came to me with that request. Currently, the seekers that are in the pilot, just by chance, are similar to Justin, in that they may have had a number of years of cashier experience, various jobs, but entry-level positions, and are looking to get back in the workforce, but are looking to do it more effectively, as we've talked about. And I have a few job seekers that have never had work before. So that seems to be the type of people that are coming into the pilot now. But our hope is it'll move out of pilot mode and into permanent programming. And we're hoping to see people at various levels of their careers. And I would be honored if I could help in any way.
Thanks, Megan. Is there any other questions or comments for Megan and Justin today? Cynthia said that Justin had some great analogies today. I have to agree with her. They're really easy to relate to.
He's the boss.
Oh, another question. So Cynthia asked, is supported employment provided based on IQ? I don't think that's how you would
No,
apply.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's being shifted away. Now in this pilot, well, IQ has nothing to do with this. For the purposes of this pilot, we're not, there is no funding attached for coaches. So if someone came to me with an autism diagnosis that I did the intake process with, and we determined that they are certainly able to work, but would be most successful with a coach, I would refer that individual to the colleagues I share the office with, and they would provide supported coach employment. But one of the interesting pieces that we're doing here is we're gathering data on individuals with ASD who might need coaching, who might not, you know, how many hours need to go into something similar to Justin's capabilities before they can pop out into the world. What would sort of a drop-in coach situation look like? Doing this just allows us to explore this sort of gap in service that folks on the spectrum have often been subjected to, unfortunately. And we're really hoping to change that through the pilot.
Sorry, Megan, you're cutting in now a little bit again. I got bits and pieces of what you were saying just then.
Really, it's just our pilot does not service the idea of coaching, but certainly Avalon Employment would do that for folks on the spectrum.
Thanks, Megan. David said, great job, guys.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments? Mark said, thank you very much for sharing your story.
Oh, you're welcome.
Cynthia said, it's great to hear from Justin and to hear your perspective. Trina said, it was such an informative webinar. Thank you very much. Michelle said, you guys were awesome. Thank you so much, Justin.
Oh, wow, cool.
And Sarah said, thank you so much. You guys were both awesome. We have another question as well. So Tara also said, Justin, what advice would you give a young person with ASD just starting out and looking for their very first job?
Oh, wow, when you're that young. Okay, let me think about that for a second. Let's see.
Yeah, definitely don't jump into anything that's like too tough or too high responsibility. Yeah, start off with something with like minimal responsibility, whatever you do. Like, especially if anything, if you're that young, you're probably better off like stay out of the grocery stores, especially popular ones, because your head's gonna get warped really fast, especially when you're young, when you don't have the experience. So yeah, definitely get an easy job. Start small, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else, guys?
For all.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I listened to that when I was starting out. Kathy said, thank you very much. Helpful to hear from adults' lived experiences to help me as OT think big picture working with kids with ASD. That's a good point. Yes, it's very valuable.
Oh, good stuff, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions or comments, I guess we'll finish off today. So again, thank you so much to our ASL interpreters, to our closed captioning services, to Megan and Justin, of course, and all of you guys who also joined us today. We will be recording this webinar and uploading it to our YouTube channel, probably the beginning or mid dates of September. So stay tuned on our social media channels for that. Or you can send us an email at mentorabilityatlantic@supportedemployment.ca. And we can add you to our mailing list for all of the latest updates on our webinars and things like that as well. And we had one more comment. This was wonderful. Thank you very much, Justin and Megan, from Louise.
Oh, you're welcome.
You. It was our pleasure.
Erin just asked, if you're uploading to media channel, can you include captions for the unclear parts? Erin, we'll certainly do our very best for that. I'll look into that as well when we're editing the video, see what we can do. Okay. All right. So thank you so much, guys. That's it for today.
Thank you.
All right, see you around.
Bye.
All right. Have a great day, guys. See ya.
Yeah.